Leonard Kim pressed his forehead against the cold glass, looking out over the sprawling desert complex. The setting sun cast long shadows across the tarmac, painting the scene in gold and crimson. A few kilometers away, the newly erected hangar glowed with high-intensity floodlights. The rumor was that inside it, a revolutionary piece of technology lay hidden, a shard of alien machinery discovered when an extraterrestrial probe crashed into Earth months ago. Though Leonard had dedicated most of his life to unraveling the mysteries of theoretical physics and advanced propulsion systems, he knew the magnitude of this discovery left them all novices by comparison. Word had spread that the alien technology, once secured, was beyond anything humanity had anticipated. No one knew exactly what it was used for, and speculation ran wild. A faster-than-light engine, a matter replicator? An incomprehensible communications device. Still, nearly all scientists, including the usually skeptical ones, harbored an urgent hope that it could redefine human civilization. He left the observation deck, heading back inside the main research building. Dim lights illuminated the labyrinth of corridors. Polished floors reflected the overhead glow as men and women hurried in various directions with piles of documents or digital tablets in their arms. Their eyes glimmered more brightly than the lamps. This hush of shared excitement bound them all. Something prodigious was going on in the heart of this facility. When Leonard reached Laboratory 14B, a small group of top-level scientists were gathered around a large, carefully climate-controlled container. Dr. Hassan, the lead materials specialist, was trying to maintain his composure as he explained something to the others. The container's reinforced glass window revealed a small fragment of curved alloy with a faint luminescent pattern. From time to time, the pattern shimmered, like distant stars in a night sky. "This is not a mere chunk of metal," Dr. Hassan said, carefully brushing a gloved hand across the container's glass. "We've used every scanning method known to us, X-ray, neutron, gamma, and it's striking. The atomic lattice appears to have a configuration that defies typical patterns of conduction and structural stability. I believe it's some form of nanolattice that we've never before seen." Leonard studied the object's arcs of color. It looked more like a living organism than an inert piece of machinery. "Have you been able to figure out any function yet?" Dr. Hassan shook his head. "Not beyond the suspicion that it might be a critical part of a propulsion drive. The shape, the embedded wiring, everything about it suggests it's part of a system designed to manipulate energy at an incredible efficiency rate." It had been a mere month since the crash, and already the government had mobilized an unprecedented worldwide panel of experts. From quantum theorists to mechanical engineers, their directive was single-minded: reverse engineer as much of the alien technology as quickly as possible. The impetus behind this push was universal. If humans could tap into what the extraterrestrials possessed, the advantage would be immeasurable. Interstellar travel, advanced weaponry, endless energy resources. And there was a looming question: how soon would these aliens come looking for what they had lost? Leonard took a breath. "Equation models?" he asked quietly. "Partial. We're simulating energy flux at the subatomic level, but even the advanced computer arrays can't handle real-time modeling. We keep hitting computational dead ends. The alien design is so complex, we don't even know how much of it is mechanical, and how much is something else, something we haven't encountered." A hush settled over the group. Leonard could almost hear their collective hearts beating. This was the frontier they had hungered for their entire lives. A frontier littered with intricacies that seemed infinite, yet they had to push on, even if it seemed impossible. As they continued to hypothesize, an urgent beeping sound came from a console positioned on the side of the room. One of the technicians strode over and read a message that came up in glowing text. "High Command wants Leading Team 2 to report for an interdepartmental briefing," the technician announced. "Looks like they have new data from the neural lens scanning array we set up yesterday." Leonard glanced at Dr. Hassan. They both silently agreed to attend the briefing. They filed out with the rest of Team 2, heading down a corridor and descending in an elevator to an underground complex. The doors opened onto a cavernous space bristling with rows of monitors and computer banks. Everyone was on edge, eyes riveted to live data streams. At the far end of the hall, General Westcott, a tall woman with imposing stature, beckoned to them. "Come, gather around," she said, her voice echoing. "We just got an analysis from the neural lens scanning array. It's going to sound impossible, but the data suggests that the fragment we have is akin to a neural circuit board, perhaps an extension of a central intelligence system." A ripple of murmurs spread through the assembled scientists. Neural lens scanning was an experimental technique for visualizing quantum states in biological tissue, something originally developed for advanced brain research. It had never been used on inanimate objects until this mission. Yet here, it was apparently giving them insight into something that blurred the line between the inanimate and the living. General Westcott raised a hand to command silence. The mind you see in those scans, it shows a pattern, a set of data transitions that is coherent. Our top AI specialists compare it to a complex neural network designed to handle massive computations. But it's not just any neural network. It evolves with input, self-modifying at a hardware level. In short, it looks like an adaptive system that can restructure its architecture on the fly. "That's extraordinary," whispered Dr. Hassan. "A shape-shifting processor?" Leonard heard the collective amazement. In all of Earth's technical achievements, the idea of a physically adaptive, self-repairing processor was borderline fantasy, something computer scientists had only begun theorizing. "Indeed," General Westcott said. "Given these findings, we believe the fragment to be part of the alien vessel's primary computing core, or a critical node. But the real bombshell is that, as of this morning, we detected what might be a faint signal emanating from it." Silence fell again. Even the hum of machinery felt muted in that moment. Leonard's pulse spiked. If it was sending a signal, "We aren't sure what that signal is," Westcott continued, her tone grave. "It could be an automated distress beacon. We tried to jam it, but—" She paused. "It absorbs the jamming attempts as though it's fueling an internal process. We do not believe it's out of control. However, we must proceed with caution. We can't let the creators of this fragment detect what we're doing. At the same time, it's a quantum leap for us to analyze a potential live system that advanced." Leonard felt the edges of fear creeping in, yet beneath that fear crackled a fierce excitement. He set his jaw and raised a hand. "General, we still have the separate pieces from the craft's hull, right? The ones that crashed down in the Eastern Hemisphere?" "Yes," she replied, "but they showed no signs of life or signal emission. They're definitely inert materials, albeit extremely durable." Leonard nodded. "What if we developed a partial interface with the live fragment? We'd keep it quarantined, but attempt to feed it controlled data inputs to see if it reacts. That might give us clues about how to replicate, or at least mimic, its computational approach." He expected protests, but instead found measured agreement among the researchers. Perhaps his colleagues shared that same hunger, that fervent desire to move beyond what Earth science already understood. General Westcott's lips tightened, as though running the scenario through her mind. "We'll proceed, but with multiple fail-safes in place," she concluded. "We cannot risk the fragment reactivating the entire ship, or summoning its masters." In the weeks that followed, the largest concerted research effort in human history took shape. It extended well beyond this desert location. All around the globe, teams participated in parsing out small sections of the alien blueprints gleaned from the partial scanning data. The fragment remained under lock and key in the desert facility, carefully studied in sterile labs. Meanwhile, Leonard found himself at the forefront of the interface project. They set up a custom-built environment, an enclosed, magnetically shielded chamber surrounded by layers of lead and exotic alloy. Cables snaked in from the outside, feeding a carefully calibrated data stream into the fragment. The feed was regulated by specialized quantum computers that were developed for the mission, each the size of a cramped apartment. Their power consumption soared, causing entire blocks of the facility to flicker each time they incrementally ramped up the data flow. Leonard and Dr. Hassan spent countless nights analyzing the fragment's response patterns. It was akin to conversing with a being that only spoke in a dialect of quantum fluctuations. When they fed it partial sequences of prime numbers, it responded with reconfigurations that stumped them. When they replaced the data with images of Earth's geological layers, hoping the universal language of geology might yield a simpler response, it shaped new luminescent patterns that gave no clear sense of cause and effect. As days blurred, the few hours Leonard managed to sleep were peppered with half-lucid dreams of the fragment knitting itself into a giant cosmic tapestry. He would awake in a cold sweat, uncertain whether it was an omen or simply the price of fatigue. Yet each morning he returned to the lab, driven by an almost feverish determination. They had to decode it, or it might decode them first. After nearly 2 months of constant attempts, the breakthrough came at 3:16 a.m. on a Tuesday. Leonard and Hassan had input a dataset containing fundamental quantum physics equations describing entanglement, superposition, and particle interactions. Something in that data ignited a small but unmistakable transformation within the fragment. The luminescent patterns stabilized, no longer flickering randomly. They assumed a coherent shape akin to a spiral galaxy. Slowly, that swirling pattern grew brighter until it produced an oscillation that manifested on the lab's instrumentation. Then, just when they thought it might vanish, the fragment glowed with an intense clarity. Without warning, a new wave of energy radiated outward. The entire lab's power grid flickered. Alarms shrieked. Leonard, bracing himself against a control console, saw lines of code scroll across a monitor at impossible speed. "Shut it down!" shouted one of the technicians, but the fail-safe commands weren't responding. It felt as if the entire apparatus were being hijacked. The team scrambled, fear in their eyes. Leonard hammered at the override, but it was locked. Just when panic threatened to consume them, the lights surged back and stabilized. The codes vanished from the monitor, replaced by a single phrase in unremarkable white text. "Hello." Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the hum of filtration systems. Dr. Hassan stared, mouth agape. None of them had expected such direct communication. Slowly, Leonard typed on a keyboard, uncertain if the fragment could read it. "Who are you?" There was no direct reply. Instead, the fragment's surface shimmered, and the single word on the screen blinked out. A moment later, a new line appeared. "What is this place?" The question launched them into a flurry of speculation and excitement. They realized the fragment possessed a rudimentary intelligence, or was at least imprinted with an AI-like persona. They had opened a dialogue. Cautiously, with trembling fingers, Leonard typed, "Earth. You crashed here." They exchanged many messages over the next hour, with the fragment responding in short, sometimes cryptic lines. It seemed to have partial amnesia or limited access to its memory. It didn't recall details of its creators, only that they had tasked it with exploring beyond the local star cluster. The design sophistication implied it had learned or downloaded advanced data from distant reaches of the galaxy. Yet the direct knowledge it held of its builders was locked away or absent. Fueling their determination, they pressed forward with questions about the alien technology. The fragment responded in oblique hints, describing fields of folded space-time and conversion of matter to wave symphonies. It was an abstract language that only partially translated into human scientific terms, but this was enough. Over the subsequent weeks, they chipped away at the puzzle, gleaning invaluable insights. Each new line of code that the fragment revealed was quickly disseminated to specialized teams around the globe. Physicists in Zurich, quantum engineers in Tokyo, and material scientists in Sydney collaborated around the clock. The result was a rapid accumulation of knowledge that dwarfed decades of normal scientific progress. The biggest question remained: Could they harness the technology to build a functioning faster-than-light drive? Officially, the leadership insisted on cautious steps, but it soon became apparent that the entire world was at stake. Leaks hinted that other international powers might be on the brink of striking clandestine deals. Religious groups, alarmed by the discovery, cautioned that mankind was meddling with forces beyond its place in the cosmos. Meanwhile, speculation abounded that the aliens might return, outraged at humanity's theft. No matter the background chatter, Leonard and his colleagues forged ahead, united by a sense of destiny. The interface with the fragment was refined, its intelligence coaxed to share more structured data. They discovered that the device utilized quantum entanglement on a scale never before implemented, bridging entire star systems in real time. This allowed the craft's computer systems to remain in instantaneous contact with other parts of itself, even light years apart. The rumored faster-than-light travel seemed to revolve around something the fragment referred to simply as threshold jump. They began constructing prototypes based on the data. Small smelt test rigs meant to replicate the threshold jump phenomenon. Each rig required materials so exotic that they had to be synthesized in newly built reactors. The power demands were staggering, but with unprecedented cooperation, hundreds of global institutions fed resources into the effort. The endeavor dwarfed the scale of the Apollo program, the Large Hadron Collider, and the entire ISS portfolio combined. Less than a year after the initial crash, the first test rig was completed in the Mojave Proving Grounds, not far from the main research complex. It stood 5 stories tall, crowned by a ring of superconductive coils. The ring housed the microlattice components derived from the alien fragment's data. Massive generators rumbled at the perimeter, ready to feed an ocean of energy into the system. Leonard, now recognized as one of the leading experts in alien-human interface technology, stood before the ring alongside Dr. Hassan and a small podium of controllers. Military brass, government officials, and fellow researchers looked on from behind reinforced observation windows. If the calculations were correct, this demonstration could change the course of history. "Power up the ring," Leonard commanded. A series of heavy clunks echoed, and the superconductors began to glow. The ring pulsed with a bluish light. Static electricity crackled in the air, making everyone's hair stand on end. From behind the safety glass, General Westcott's voice rang through the speakers. "Proceed with Phase 1. Leonard entered commands, and the ring's humming intensified. A swirling distortion began to form inside the circle. It looked like a fluid funnel of air, but no wind was generated. Readouts on the monitors around them showed rising energy levels, culminating in a stable bubble of warped space. Invisible to the naked eye, it was visible on the sensors, a small region where the curvature of space-time was folding back on itself. Dr. Hassan gently lifted a small drone the size of a basketball. Fitted with sensors, it was meant to test the integrity of the phenomenon. He rolled it along a track until it hovered at the ring's edge. Everyone held their breath. Slowly, the drone moved forward and disappeared into the distortion. For several seconds, there was no signal. Then the ring flashed once, and the distortion spat the drone out at high velocity. It clattered to the ground on the other side of the ring, spinning wildly, sensors sparking. Alarms rang out in the control room. Technicians scrambled to interpret the data. By the time Leonard shut the ring down, the system had overheated. The test was over. While it wasn't the neat outcome they'd hoped for, the preliminary data told an incredible story. The drone's onboard chronometer showed a shift of 0.002 seconds relative to external time. It had, at least in a minuscule way, stepped outside conventional rules. Their experiment had forced open a wedge into that elusive threshold. This was just the start. In a flurry of activity, they made adjustments, refined the design, and tried again. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect was how rapidly the developments followed. Once the fundamental principle was understood, It set off a chain reaction of improvements in modular computing, energy generation, and nanotechnology. The fragment from the alien vessel continued to guide adjustments, outputting cryptic messages like "strengthen the coil matrix" or "delay entanglement collapse." With each tweak, they inched closer to controlling the threshold jump rather than letting it fling a hapless drone around. Through countless nights of trial and error, they finally reached a design stable enough to risk sending a live occupant, albeit not a human. Instead, they used a genetically enhanced lab mouse, fitted with vitals monitoring implants. The day of that test was marked by thick clouds rolling overhead, as though the heavens themselves stood in spectator awe. They initiated the ring. The swirling distortion reappeared inside, this time carefully contained with additional damping fields. Dr. Hassan placed the clear, sealed pod that held the mouse just inside the threshold zone. The ring thrummed with energy. Monitors spiked. The distortion enveloped the pod, making it shimmer. For a moment, the device was somewhere else, unreachable, intangible. Then it snapped back into view. The inside observer window scrambled with static. Yet as soon as the distortion subsided, telemetric data poured in. The mouse was alive. Its brainwave patterns showed stress, but it was unharmed. More astonishing was that the rollover on the mouse's chronometer indicated it had experienced almost no time during that split-second jump. Another reading showed that it had in fact traversed a minute fraction of space outside the boundaries of the ring, an ephemeral but measurable displacement. While hardly a huge distance, it was enough to prove that threshold jump was real and reproducible. News spread like wildfire. The project no longer remained a secret among top scientists and military brass. Civilians around the world sensed something monumental was unfolding. Governments scrambled to control the narrative, playing footage of the tests on carefully orchestrated broadcasts, framing the discovery as a triumph for humanity as a whole. While details remained classified, the public understood that a door to new possibilities had opened. It was at this moment of collective euphoria that the first contact came. A series of high-energy radio wave pulses beamed into Earth's orbital space. The pulses translated into a single, repeated message. Siamet origin. Is unit operational? Expert ears recognized the pattern as extremely similar to the inkly transmission they had once gleaned from the alien fragment. The creators were calling. They had found their lost technology, or at least a trace of it. Panic roused every level of leadership. Some factions wanted to respond politely, seeking peaceful dialogue. Others insisted they keep silent or attempt to hide. But the calls kept coming, each accompanied by an escalating electromagnetic signature that rattled satellite systems. Humanity had precious little time to decide, because ignoring them might be interpreted as hostility. Meanwhile, the fragment in the lab reactivated on its own. It displayed new lines of text on the console. They are here. Prepare yourselves. Leonard felt the weight of those words. Something told him they had no choice but to push forward. They had come so far, surpassing expectations, and perhaps now outpacing the original creator's timetable. If they had a working threshold jump system, they might hold a powerful card. But it was still experimental, untested on large scales. They had to think big and fast. Under the direction of General Westcott, they accelerated the assembly of a prototype starship called the Horizon Breaker. It was a patchwork of Earth engineering and alien-inspired technology. From the outside, it resembled an elongated arrowhead, bristling with newly developed superconducting coils. At its heart lay the threshold jump drive. No one had illusions that they were building something perfect, but it was a bold leap of faith. If the creators intended to reclaim their property through force, humanity's only chance might be to demonstrate its willingness to stand on equal footing. Within weeks, the final touches on Horizon Breaker neared completion. Inside its cramped corridors, every inch was rigged with monitoring instruments. The plan was to send a skeletal Crew 8, daring individuals on a short jump beyond Earth's orbit, perhaps to the moon or bit beyond, then back. If successful, it would prove that humanity, in a matter of months, had unlocked a secret that likely took the alien race centuries to perfect. On the eve of the launch, Leonard found himself in a quiet observation bubble at the top of the desert facility. He gazed at the infinite desert sky. The approach of the alien signal had quieted for a few days, replaced by a persistent hum that Earth scientists suspected carried vast amounts of data. No overt threat had materialized, but tension lay palpable in the air. Citizens around the world watched with bated breath to see if the first jump-capable human vessel would quietly vanish or spark a cosmic confrontation. The next morning, as dawn light crept over the horizon, the crew of Horizon Breaker boarded the ship. Leonard, though he had the technical expertise, was asked to remain behind to monitor from mission control. Dr. Hassan, on the other hand, would join the flight. He felt certain that if anything went wrong, his understanding of alien materials might help salvage the mission. Horizon Breaker rose on conventional thrusters from the desert launch pad, blazing a trail into the pale sky. Dr. Hassan's steady voice crackled through the comm feeds. Reaching low Earth orbit, preparing threshold systems for spool-up, power nominal, at least for now. In the Mission Control Center, Leonard hovered by a console with direct links to the threshold drive. This was the moment of truth. The entire operation, and maybe the future of humanity, hinged on whether they could jump at will and return. As the ship coasted into orbit, screens showed real-time data, each coil's energy load, each superconductive channel's temperature. The numbers soared as they initiated the drive. Seconds ticked by in an agonizing crawl. Then the radio feed erupted with a roar of static. For a flash, the Horizon Breaker's transponder reading vanished. Leonard's heart jumped into his throat. They lost contact. He stared at a blank feed, adrenaline spiking. Technicians typed frantically, attempting to re-establish the link. General Westcott gripped the edge of a console. Everyone in the control room went silent, waiting. After what felt like an eternity, just 2 seconds, the transponder feed flared back to life. Cameras on the Horizon Breaker sent back a jumbled feed before stabilizing. On screen, Leonard saw the lunar horizon looming, far closer than any conventional craft could have traveled in such a short time. The gasps in Mission Control were audible. 1,000 control panels beeped in chorus. "Mission Control, do you read?" came Hassan's voice, a bit unsteady but discernible. "We appear to be orbiting the moon, and we're all intact?" "I'm reading stable vitals. The threshold jump was successful." Elation consumed the room. Applause, cheers, even tears. Never in recorded history had humans traveled so far, so fast. It wasn't mere orbit-to-orbit speed. It was a new dimension of travel, faster than humanity's wildest dreams. But almost immediately, the data feed showed the buildup of a peculiar electromagnetic signature. Something bright glowed in the blackness of space behind the Horizon Breaker. The alien signal. The creators, whoever they were, had arrived in near-lunar space. Another vessel shimmered into being, as though it had jumped out of nowhere, forming a faint, elongated silhouette dwarfed by the gray edge of the moon. For a moment, it hung silent, then pulsed with lights across its hull. Mission Control erupted, half in awe, half in fear. Leonard's gaze locked on the readings. The ship was enormous, several kilometers in length, a seamless structure with swirling patterns reminiscent of the fragment. Her arms raced around the ringed vessel, a seamless structure with swirling patterns reminiscent of the energy signature dwarfed that of the Horizon Breaker. Everyone braced for the worst. If this advanced race had come in anger, Earth stood no chance. Transmissions flared across the comm channels. The new vessel broadcast again, but in a more refined manner. The repeated phrase, "Origin? Unit operational?" Except now it was accompanied by layered meaning, like a linguistic handshake. Dr. Hassan answered calmly, affirming that the damaged piece was with them, integrated into their knowledge. They openly admitted they were humans. No direct threat or confrontation followed. Instead, the alien vessel responded with a cryptic set of pulses that left Earth's translators scrambling. Then, unexpectedly, the enormous ship pivoted gracefully and vanished, leaving behind only swirling afterimages of energy. No direct contact, no open hostility. Leonard stared at the monitors. Trying to make sense of it, the aliens had confirmed that humanity possessed their technology, realized it was operational, and left. Why? Over the following days, speculation ran rampant. Perhaps the aliens had left them alone for now, or perhaps they intended to study Earth from afar. The fragment in the lab reawakened once more, displaying a new message. You have ascended faster than we did. We no longer see you as a lower form. That message, presumably from the alien intelligence encoded within the fragment, underscored the magnitude of what had happened. Humanity had not only deciphered the alien tech, but innovated upon it, bridging the gap in record time. The creators seemed impressed, maybe even surprised. Instead of reclaiming or destroying the technology, they had recognized Earth's achievement, perhaps awarding them a place in a cosmic arena. Or perhaps they were simply retreating to regroup and decide their next move. Whatever the motive, the symbolic meaning was clear. Humanity was no longer stranded in the cosmic wilderness. They were forging a path beyond it, powered by the knowledge gleaned from that single, shimmering fragment. Overnight, Earth's sense of self changed. Borders lost meaning. As the promise of interstellar exploration took center stage, alliances emerged, fueled by the dream of building more threshold ships. A new age of technological wonders seemed inevitable. Leonard found himself in a quiet corridor once more, but this time the corridor was at the newly christened Global Threshold Institute, a gleaming facility built to continue refining the alien-human synergy. He paused by a window overlooking a busy construction yard where half a dozen threshold-capable vessels were under assembly. People bustled about in bright red jumpsuits, hauling advanced materials that had once only existed in theory. The hume of ambition buzzed in the air. His gaze flicked toward a digital display overhead. It anchored a live feed from one of Earth's orbiting satellites, capturing a lonely shot of the lunar horizon. He wondered if the alien creators were just beyond that vantage, watching. Perhaps they admired humanity's thirst for discovery, or perhaps they merely bided their time before returning with a more complex agenda. At that moment, Dr. Hassan walked up behind him, looking exhausted but thrilled. "We're less than a year from having an entire fleet of threshold ships," Hassan said. Leonard nodded. "I still can't believe how quickly it all happened. So many leaps forward in so little time." Hassan's eyes were bright. "It's as if unlocking the fragment's secrets unlocked something in us as well, a desire to push boundaries. We've soared from picks and shovels to starships in record time." They stood silently, letting awe settle upon them. In that humbling stillness, the corridor's tinted windows reflected their faces. They were ordinary humans' flesh and bone. But now they held the seeds of a technology that transcended many of the limitations that had once caged them. "Where do we go from here?" Hassan whispered. It was a question that carried countless implications. New colonies, new alliances, new dangers. Would humans venture into neighboring star systems, meet the aliens on their own turf? Would they become explorers or new conquerors? Leonard kept his gaze on the night sky. "We step forward, one jump at a time. We'll find them eventually, or they'll find us. Whichever way it goes, we'll be ready." And so it was that humanity, in a frantic sprint born of determination and wonder, had cracked open the universe's door far faster than anyone, even their alien benefactors or creators, had expected. The desert facility's lights continued to glow, a beacon of human will, announcing to the cosmos that Earth was no longer bound by old confines. They were free, forging their own path among the stars. Faster now than even the hand that made them, they had become architects of their own destiny, prepared to face whatever waited beyond the threshold.